Hi, my name is Natalie, and I am 30 years old. If you had asked me a few years ago what my life looked like, I would have smiled and told you I was one of the happiest women in Charlotte, North Carolina. I married for love, not for money, not for convenience, but for the kind of love that makes you believe you have found forever. My husband, Jacob, had once been my best friend, my confidant, and the man I trusted with every part of my heart. Together, we built dreams, whispered plans late into the night, and promised to protect each other no matter what. I truly believed nothing could shake the foundation of our marriage. We lived in his family's home, a modest house on the outskirts of Charlotte, where Jacob's parents, Emma and William, also lived along with his younger sister, Susan. At first, I told myself this arrangement was practical, even traditional in some ways, but I never realized how much it would slowly strip away my peace. What started as a shared home eventually became a reminder that I wasn't truly in control of my own household. At the time, I didn't let it weigh on me too much, because my heart was completely focused on my little girl, Harper, who had just turned 5. With her dark curls and wide, curious eyes, she was my entire world. Every morning, when she wrapped her tiny arms around my neck and whispered, "I love you, Mommy," it felt as though all the struggles faded away. Her innocence was a light I wanted to protect at all costs. William, my father-in-law, was kind and respectful. He often reminded me not to take Emma's sharp words too seriously. He ran a small shop that barely kept up with the household expenses, but he worked hard without complaint. Emma, my mother-in-law, was the complete opposite, controlling, harsh, and forever dissatisfied. She carried herself as though I would never be enough for her son. No matter how much effort I put into respecting her, her standards were always impossible to meet. Then there was Susan, unmarried and in her mid-20s, bitter and jealous of everything I had. She often whispered in Emma's ear, fueling her resentment toward me, and never missed a chance to criticize me when Jacob and I argued. My own parents, Edward and Mary, were loving, supportive, and wealthy in a way Jacob's family could only dream of. As their only daughter, I had always been cherished and protected, but even with their love, I hated asking them for help. I wanted my marriage to stand on its own, without leaning on my parents' money. What I didn't know then was that to my in-laws, my parents' wealth was not just a fact, it was an opportunity. At the beginning, I still clung to hope. Jacob was gentle, attentive, and quick to laugh with me. We dreamed about Harper's schooling, about one day moving out into a small home of our own, away from his parents. Those conversations gave me strength. But what I didn't realize was how quickly those dreams would be overshadowed by demands I never could have imagined, demands that would test not just my marriage, but my very sense of self. It started one afternoon when Emma pulled me aside while Jacob was at work. She sighed in her usual dramatic way and told me their small shop had suffered a loss. "William is doing all he can," she said, "but business is hard these days. If only you could ask your parents to help a little. It's not much to them, but it could mean survival for us." My stomach twisted at her words. Asking my parents for money had never been part of my marriage. I told her it wasn't something I was comfortable with, but she pressed on, insisting that family sacrifices for family. That evening, when Jacob came home, he repeated her request. "Just this once," he said softly. "It's only $3,000. Your parents won't even notice." His pleading broke me down. Against my better judgment, I called my father, Edward. He didn't question me, and within days, the money was in Emma's hands. I told myself it would end there, but I was wrong. A few months later, Susan began her endless complaints. She cried about how she couldn't finish a professional course she wanted because of money. "All my friends are moving forward and I'm stuck here," she wailed. Emma, of course, chimed in, telling Jacob that if I truly cared about his family, I would ask my parents again. This time, the demand was $4,200. Jacob urged me once more, saying it was only temporary. I gave in again, even though it felt humiliating, like I wasn't an adult woman running her own household, but a child begging my parents for favors. The third time came sooner than I expected. Emma claimed the roof needed urgent repairs. William stayed silent, too weary to challenge her. Jacob came to me, saying $6,500 would solve everything. I remember standing in the kitchen, my hands gripping the counter, wondering how I had allowed this cycle to begin. But Jacob's insistence wore me down. Once again, I asked my parents. Once again, they gave. Once again, Emma acted as if I should be grateful she accepted it. In total, I had asked for $13,700. Each time, a little part of my dignity crumbled. I told myself I was protecting my marriage and Harper's future, but in my heart, I knew something had shifted. The more I gave, the bolder Emma and Susan became. They no longer treated it as help. It became an expectation. Susan, especially, grew restless. She was nearing 30, still unmarried, and bitter that her friends were settling down with lavish weddings while she remained stuck. I overheard Emma whispering one night, her voice sharp with entitlement. "Don't worry, Susan. Natalie's parents have more than enough. They'll cover it. They have to." My heart sank. They weren't asking anymore. They were planning. The final blow came during dinner one evening. Emma raised her voice over the clinking of dishes and declared, "Susan deserves a proper wedding. It's our duty to make it happen, but we can't do it alone. Natalie, you'll need to speak to your parents. We'll need $30,000. I nearly dropped my fork. $30,000? I asked, my voice trembling. It's nothing to them, right? Susan snapped. Your parents are wealthy. They won't even miss it. I turned to Jacob, desperate for support, but Emma placed her hand on his arm. He stayed silent until finally saying, "She's right, Natalie. What's the harm? They've helped before, and they can help again. This time, it's for my sister's future." "No," I said firmly, my voice shaking with anger. "They've already given too much. $13,700 is not small change, and I will not ask them again." Emma's eyes narrowed, and Susan's face twisted with fury. The air grew heavy. For the first time, I felt the true weight of their resentment pressing down on me. Something inside told me this storm wasn't going to blow over. The days after that dinner became unbearable. Emma and Susan whispered behind my back, loud enough that I could hear every poisoned word. Jacob grew colder, siding with them in arguments instead of standing beside me. I felt like a stranger in my own home, walking on eggshells, dreading the moment their bitterness would erupt into something worse than insults. Deep down, I knew that moment was coming. It was an ordinary evening when everything shattered. Dinner was on the table, Harper was coloring quietly at the side, and I prayed for peace. But Emma and Susan had other plans. They began casually talking about wedding venues, flowers, and the dress Susan deserved. Then Emma turned to me, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Natalie, have you spoken to your parents yet?" I set down my fork. "I already told you," I said firmly. "I will not ask them for money again." Susan slammed her hand against the table, making Harper flinch. "You're unbelievable. You'd rather ruin my future than help your own family? $30,000 is nothing to them." My chest tightened, but I stood my ground. "I am not their messenger, Susan. And I am not going to keep draining them because you want a lavish wedding. Enough is enough." The room froze. Then Emma's voice sliced through the silence. "Jacob, are you really going to let her disrespect us like this? Are you going to let your wife ruin your sister's future?" Jacob's eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw hesitation. But then his jaw tightened and he shouted, "You didn't listen, Natalie. You think you can keep saying no? This is your punishment for disobeying me." Emma's chair scraped loudly as she stood, her face twisted with rage. My pulse raced as she moved toward me. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed what she reached for, the cricket bat Jacob always left leaning against the wall near the couch. He loved the sport, often practicing swings or showing Harper how to hold it, so no one thought twice about it lying around the house. But in Emma's hands, it became something else entirely. Before I could move, she raised the bat and brought it crashing against the side of my head. Pain exploded, sharp and blinding. I stumbled, clutching my scalp as warm blood trickled down. "Mommy!" Harper screamed, rushing toward me. But Emma turned on her too, snarling, "Stay out of this." She swung the bat again, striking Harper across the head. My little girl collapsed onto the floor, sobbing in terror. I cried out, crawling toward her, shielding her small body with my arms. My vision blurred, but I could still hear Jacob's voice booming over my screams. "You brought this on yourself, Natalie. You didn't obey." William jumped up, shouting, "Enough. Have you lost your minds?" He tried to grab the bat, but Emma shoved him back while Susan screamed at him to stay out of it. The three of them, Emma, Jacob, and Susan, closed in, their anger suffocating the room. Then, with one final shove, Emma and Susan dragged me and Harper toward the door and threw us out onto the porch. The cold night air hit my face as the door slammed behind us. I held Harper close, her tiny body trembling against mine, blood staining my shirt where her head had been struck. My own head throbbed so violently, I thought I might collapse right there on the porch steps. But I couldn't. I couldn't let Harper see me give up. I staggered down to the sidewalk, pulled out my phone with shaking hands, and called the only people I could trust. "Mom," I sobbed when Mary answered. "Please, we need you." Within half an hour, my parents' car pulled up in front of the house. My mother rushed out first, her face pale with horror as she saw me clutching Harper, both of us bloodied and shaking. "Oh my God, Natalie," she cried, taking Harper gently from my arms. My father, Edward, looked at me with fury burning in his eyes. "Who did this?" he demanded, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Emma," I whispered. "She hit us with the cricket bat. Jacob, he just stood there, shouting that I deserved it. And Susan helped throw us out." My words broke into sobs, but Edward didn't need to hear more. His jaw tightened, and he said firmly, "Get in the car. We're going home." At my parents' house, the warmth of their living room felt like another world compared to the cruelty we had just escaped. My mother carefully cleaned the cut on my scalp while Harper curled against her, still whimpering. My father paced the room like a storm, fists clenched, muttering, "They've crossed every line." For the first time that night, I felt a sliver of safety, though shame still weighed heavy. I hated that I had bent so many times under Emma's manipulations, that I had allowed Jacob to become someone I no longer recognized. The next morning, Edward and Mary insisted we go straight to the hospital. Doctors examined us both, documenting every bruise and injury. The swelling on Harper's small forehead, the cut on my scalp, the blood-soaked hair, it was all photographed and officially recorded. Watching my daughter lying on a hospital bed, clutching my hand while nurses checked her vitals, hardened something inside me. What had once been fear transformed into resolve. With medical reports in hand, we went directly to the police station in Charlotte. Filing the complaint was the hardest thing I had ever done. My voice shook as I described how Emma had raised the cricket bat and struck both me and my 5-year-old daughter, how Jacob had stood there shouting that it was my punishment, and how Susan had helped throw us out of the house. The officer's expression grew darker with every detail. He leaned forward and said firmly, "You and your daughter are safe now. This will not be ignored." My father immediately contacted an attorney, one of the best in the city. Within days, police arrived at Emma's home with a warrant. Emma was taken away in handcuffs, shouting angrily as neighbors watched. Jacob tried to argue, but the officer silenced him and placed him under arrest for aiding and abetting abuse and child endangerment. Susan, too, was arrested for her role in provoking and supporting the attack. For the first time in years, I saw the walls of their power crumble. Court proceedings began within weeks. On the day of the hearing, I sat nervously with Harper's hand tightly in mine. Across the aisle sat Emma, Jacob, and Susan, their faces filled with defiance. William, however, was not with them. He quietly chose to sit behind me, offering his silent support. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers of $3,000, $4,200, and $6,500 were presented, proving the pattern of financial exploitation, and the final demand of $30,000 showed their growing greed. Our medical reports told the story of the brutal night. The photographs of Harper's bruised forehead made the courtroom fall into shocked silence. When William took the stand, his voice was calm but steady. He described the years of manipulation he had witnessed, how Emma and Susan had poisoned Jacob's mind, and how he himself had tried to intervene when Emma raised the bat. His testimony cut through the lies and left no room for doubt. When it was my turn, I stood trembling but determined. I told the court everything: the endless demands, the humiliation of begging my parents, the night Emma raised the cricket bat, the way Jacob shouted that it was my punishment, the way Susan dragged us to the door. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. The truth filled the room, and for the first time, I felt its weight lifting from my chest. The judge's verdict came down swift and clear. Emma, my mother-in-law, was found guilty of domestic violence, child abuse, and assault with a deadly weapon. The courtroom grew quiet as the sentence was read: 12 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole only after 8 years under strict conditions. Emma's face twisted with fury, but for once, her power was gone. Jacob was convicted of aiding and abetting domestic abuse, financial exploitation, and child endangerment. The judge's voice was firm: 7 years in prison, parole possible after 5. He had stood by and watched his wife and child be beaten, shouting that it was our punishment, and the court refused to excuse him. Susan was convicted of conspiracy, provocation, and aiding in the exploitation. She received 5 years in prison, parole possible after 3. She glared at me as the bailiffs led her away, but her bitterness no longer had any hold over me. Finally, the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Natalie," she said softly, "you are granted full custody of your daughter, Harper. The divorce petition you filed will also be finalized today. From this day forward, you and your child are legally protected from these individuals." Tears blurred my eyes, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief. Harper squeezed my hand and whispered, "Mommy, are we safe now?" I knelt down, kissed her forehead gently, and told her, "Yes, baby, we're safe. No one will ever hurt us again." The trial was over, but its impact continued to ripple. William filed for divorce from Emma shortly after, saying he could not spend another day tied to that kind of cruelty. He cut Jacob and Susan out of his small business, determined that they would never benefit from him again. Quietly, he began visiting us, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit with Harper and read her a story. He became the only grandparent from that side who mattered. Life after the trial was not easy, but it was ours. I no longer woke to Emma's criticisms or Susan's complaints. I no longer lived in fear of Jacob's anger. Instead, I woke in the comfort of my parents' home, with Harper curled beside me, safe and smiling. Edward and Mary made it clear: "You and Harper are our priority now." They transferred their estate and business into my name, giving me the tools to build a future that no one could take away. At first, the weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but with their guidance, I learned to manage it. For once, I wasn't giving away money under pressure. I was investing in Harper's future. Slowly, she healed too. The bruises faded, her laughter returned, and her drawings once again decorated the refrigerator. Every milestone she reached reminded me why I had fought so hard. One evening, months later, I stood in the office of the business now under my care, looking out at the lights of Charlotte shimmering in the distance. Harper was home with my parents, happy and safe. I thought about the road that had brought me here, the betrayal, the night Emma lifted that cricket bat, the trial that gave us justice. I realized then that my story was not just one of pain, but of survival, of finding strength for myself and for my daughter. I learned that silence only protects the people who hurt you. Love without respect is not love. Sacrifice without boundaries is not noble. It's dangerous. The night Emma raised her hand against us, I thought my life was over. In reality, that was the night it truly began. Because survival is not about how much pain you can take, but about how loudly you can say, "Enough." Today, I am not just a divorced woman. I am not just a survivor. I am a mother who fought for her child's safety, a daughter who honored her parents' love by refusing to break, and a woman who will never again apologize for demanding the respect that should have been mine from the start. If there is anything you take from my story, let it be this. Never measure your worth by how much pain you can endure. Measure it by how fiercely you protect your dignity, your peace, and your future. Because no matter how dark the night feels, the power to change your story has always been, and will always be, yours. From that moment forward, life slowly began to feel new again. Harper started her first year of elementary school, clutching her backpack with nervous excitement. When I dropped her off, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'll be brave, Mommy." Watching her walk through those school doors, her little curls bouncing, made me realize just how strong she already was. She had endured more than any child should, yet she still carried hope in her eyes. That hope became my fuel. I poured myself into rebuilding. With my parents' encouragement, I stepped into the business they had transferred into my name. At first, it terrified me. Managing employees, making financial decisions, carrying the weight of responsibility, but I discovered strength I never knew I had. Every deal I signed, every successful decision, felt like a small victory against the people who once tried to break me. For the first time, I wasn't bending under someone else's demands. I was standing tall, building something lasting for my daughter. William became a steady presence in our lives. He brought Harper small gifts, like books or puzzles, and sat with her for hours, patiently listening to her stories. She warmed to him quickly, her little hand often slipping into his when he visited. For me, it was a reminder that not everyone in Jacob's family had been lost. William's quiet dignity showed me that even in a house poisoned by cruelty, there had been someone willing to stand on the side of truth. Nights became peaceful again. Gone were the sounds of Emma's scolding or Susan's taunts. Instead, laughter filled the house, Harper's giggles at bedtime stories, my parents' gentle teasing, the warmth of family that truly cared. Slowly, my nightmares faded. I no longer woke in terror, reliving the bat crashing down. Instead, I woke to the sound of my daughter's laughter and the comfort of knowing we were safe. Months turned into a year, and I realized something profound. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Harper blossomed in school, making friends and filling her notebooks with colorful drawings. I flourished in business, gaining confidence and purpose. And most importantly, I finally understood that what had once been the worst night of my life was also the beginning of my freedom. Looking back now, I see clearly. Emma, Jacob, and Susan thought they could break me, that they could silence me with fear and humiliation. But instead, they gave me the chance to find my voice, to discover strength I didn't know I had. Their downfall became the foundation of my rise. Harper and I often sit together on the porch of my parents' home, watching the sun set over Charlotte. She leans against me, her little hand tucked into mine, and says, "We're safe now, Mommy." And every time, I smile and whisper back, "Yes, baby, we're safe. And our future belongs to us." As time passed, I began to notice just how much Harper had healed. Her laughter was no longer shadowed by fear, and she slept through the night without waking up crying. She started drawing pictures of bright houses and smiling families, handing them to me proudly as if to say, "This is us now." Each drawing reminded me that she was growing up in a home filled with love, not violence. That, above everything else, was my greatest victory. I also began to heal in ways I hadn't expected. At first, I carried so much shame. Shame that I had allowed Emma to control my life. Shame that I had given into Jacob's pressure. Shame that I hadn't walked away sooner. But slowly, I realized the truth. I wasn't weak. I was human. I had loved. I had trusted. And when that trust was betrayed, I found the strength to protect my child and myself. That wasn't weakness. That was survival. Edward and Mary never once made me feel like a burden. Instead, they reminded me daily that I was their pride. My father often said, "Natalie, the day you chose to fight back, you showed Harper what real courage looks like." My mother held me when the memories became too heavy, whispering, "You are not what happened to you. You are who you've become after. Their unwavering support gave me the space to rebuild without fear of falling. One evening, after putting Harper to bed, I sat in the office of the business now under my name. The desk that once intimidated me had become a place where I made choices not only for myself, but for Harper's future. I looked out at the Charlotte skyline, the city lights shimmering like tiny stars, and thought about the path we had walked. I thought about Emma's rage, Jacob's betrayal, Susan's bitterness, and then about the courtroom where justice had spoken, about the safety we had gained, and about the freedom that finally belonged to us. I understood then that my story wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who felt trapped, for every child who lived in fear, for every voice silenced by control. My story was proof that there is always a way out, always a way forward. It may come with pain and scars, but it comes with strength too. Today, I am not defined by what Emma did with that cricket bat, or by the way Jacob shouted that I deserved punishment. I am defined by the way I stood back up, the way I fought for Harper, and the way I refused to let cruelty have the last word. If you're listening to my story, I want you to know this. No matter how dark it feels, no matter how trapped you believe you are, the power to change your life is still in your hands. Don't measure your worth by how much pain you can take. Measure it by how fiercely you protect your dignity, your peace, and your future. And as I turn off the light each night, Harper safe and sleeping beside me, I carry one unshakable truth. We are free, we are safe, and our future is finally our own. Years later, when I look back on that night, I don't just see the violence. I see the turning point. That was the moment I stopped living for Jacob's approval, Emma's demands, and Susan's jealousy. It was the night I chose Harper and myself above everyone else. What felt like the end of my world was actually the beginning of the life I was meant to have. Harper has grown into a bright, confident girl who knows her worth. Sometimes she still asks questions about her father, and I answer honestly but gently. He made bad choices, I tell her. But we are safe now, and we are surrounded by people who love us. She nods, accepting my words with a maturity beyond her years, and I see in her eyes that she understands more than I ever realized. My parents, Edward and Mary, have been my pillars through it all. They gave us not only shelter, but also the courage to keep moving forward. Their love has been Harper's safe haven, and their guidance has been mine. Even William, the one person from Jacob's family who never raised a hand against us, has become a kind of quiet grandfather figure to Harper. His presence is a reminder that not all ties to the past were poisoned. I have learned to breathe again, to laugh without guilt, to trust without fear. Our home is no longer filled with arguments and threats. It is filled with books, laughter, and dreams. Each morning, as I watch Harper leave for school with her backpack bouncing on her shoulders, I feel proud that she is walking into a world where she is free to grow without fear. The business I now manage has given me independence I once thought impossible. I'm no longer the woman begging her parents to cover endless demands. I am a provider, a decision maker, and a role model to my daughter. Every signature I make on a contract, every step I take toward success, feels like reclaiming the dignity Emma tried to strip away. And sometimes, when the weight of the past creeps back in, I remind myself of the lessons I've learned. That silence only protects the guilty. That love without respect is not love. That no woman or child should ever feel they deserve punishment for saying no. If my story reaches even one person who feels trapped, I hope it tells them this: you are not powerless. You are not alone. And the moment you say enough, your life can change. I am Natalie, once broken, now whole. I am a mother who fought for her daughter. I am a woman who walked through fire and came out stronger. And no matter what lies ahead, I know this: Harper and I are free, safe, and ready to live a life filled not with fear, but with love and light. Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you found it powerful, make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support helps us bring you more inspiring and emotional content every day.